Hi. Okay. Let me swap these two. Hello, and welcome to my LMC 2200 final project, which is a video essay. In this essay, I'm going to be talking about gender, language, and civilization in the context of Octavia Butler's speech sounds. So there's not much time, so let's just get right into it. Okay, so thesis statement, right? What am I talking about? I have two parallel complementary thesi, doesn't matter. The first is that liberated gender identity and expression is a civilizing force. And the sort of antinomy of that and corollary of that is that restrictive and conservative gender norms are a decivilizing force. Now, the obvious question in response to that heap of jargon is, what does any of that mean? Okay, well, I'll unpack. So, what do I mean by liberated gender identity and expression? And what do I mean by restrictive and conservative gender norms? So, restricted and conservative gender norms, starting with the antagonist, we're talking about what Loretta Ross identifies in their work on reproductive justice, but also just more broadly, like these, it's more than just gender roles. It's more than just, saying people should be mothers and should get an abortion. It's this whole construct of there are men and there are women, and men do this and women do that. And this, it's more than just the gender norms we have in our society. It's the gender norms we've had throughout history. So in our modern society, we have various norms about, norms that are in flux and are changing about, women are often expected to be caregivers and to have somewhere in the region of like 2 to 3 children, and their husbands are providers, but that's in flux. But even back, say before civilization, we have these gender roles of hunter-gatherers. Men do this part and women do this part, and the idea is that these sort of restrictive binding gender norms, where there's no scope for a variety of interpretations of what it means to be a man or a woman, and there's no interoperability. Those are what I am identifying as decivilizing force. I'll get to what I mean by civil in a minute. But before I do, liberated gender identity and expression. So what I'm talking about here, I've cited Carol Gilligan. I'm not saying the exact same thing Gilligan is, because I think even Gilligan's conception of what sort of people operating in harmony with their gender can be is a bit too restrictive. But I do like what Gilligan's getting at, this idea that when people are in harmony with their own understanding of their gender, we become more moral creatures. But I think it's more than that. I think there are some restrictive holdovers in Gilligan's work that are inherent to a lot of more second wave work. And I think what I'm also trying to speak to here is this idea that everyone has the freedom to identify their own gender on the terms they find appropriate and express it in the way they find appropriate, so long as they're not obviously causing issues for other people, serious issues, right? Okay, so gender expression, liberated gender identity. Okay, well, what on earth do I mean by civility? And this is where I bring in my third citation. So, I chose I figured I had a balance here by choosing the single oldest whitest guy that exists. So the issue, let's bring in the old white men and see what they have to say, right? Aristotle, translated by Joe Sachs, said that, well, so civility and to be a citizen is Latin, but before that there was the polity, the city, and the participants in the polity, which are citizens. And so what does it mean to be civilized? Well, civility relates to matters among citizens. And the idea of civilized is interactions among citizens that are not warfare, there may be dispute, there may be conflict, but it is civil. It is not religious, it is not military, it is civil. And the basic idea, what I want to get to here, is that civilization and civility and being civilized, I know there's a lot of problematic history to those terms, but and Aristotle has some pretty problematic ideas in this excerpt, which I don't have time to get into. But there is the basic concept of being civil is deliberating and judging on matters without violence and with respect and appreciating the self-sufficiency of the polity. And there's a whole gold mine of stuff to talk about there, but I only have 5 minutes. Okay, so what am I? So Octavia, Butler, and speech sounds, right? Like, okay. So I've sourced this image here from a graphic designer who I've linked here, and then I've linked in this excerpt from Octavia Butler that I don't have time to play, but it does inform what I'm saying here. So in speech sounds, we see an exploration of language and of gender, and of what it, and it's never explicitly named, but what we are dealing with is the collapse of civilization and people living in what is a profoundly uncivilized world. And the protagonist, as they learn is maybe the wrong word, as they find ways to re-access their conception of who they are, their conception of their own gender, their own language, their own thought, as they are allowed to define themselves as a savior to these children, as a partner to the man in the LAPD uniform, as whatever, that is a civilizing force. That allows them to deal with other people with far less fear and with far more civility. Now, there is a lot of death and a lot of violence because this is a world where they may be able to access a non-restrictive gender identity, sort of, but most people can't, right? And the world is in a sorry state in the work. But the point is, right, that language and its role in gender expression, identity and its relationship with gender expression, as the protagonist is able to access these things, we don't see a return to a civil society that we might, the ideal society, which of course we may have never had, but what we do see is a far more civilized form of life, even just in the protagonist's ways, where they can go to the children and they can be like, look, like, I'm not your parent, I have no responsibility to you, but I am going to take care of you. And they can say that in language, right? And it's just this idea that, there is no role imposed upon them, but they can choose a role. And that role, the choice of that role, the choice of how to express it, in language, in action, that is inherently civilizing and dignifying. So that is my essay, and I will leave it there. Thank you so much for listening.